What's up everybody, Brett here, and we're back in Total War Warhammer 2 for a 1v1 quick battle. The battle is going to be taking place on Charnel Valley, and I'm going to be playing today as Isabella von Karstein. And she's a lord that doesn't get a lot of love, so I figured I would take her in this battle and showcase some of her abilities today. And we're going to be up against Please Not the Face, pretty good name, rocking Lord Skroak as the Skaven. So because our armies are going to be positioning quite a bit this battle, I'm not going to slow-mo it for once, and we're just going to go over the army comp. So my front line is Graveguard, very nice, pretty much the best standard infantry that the vampire counts can bring. Very sturdy, silver shields, 90 armor, very good against Skaven. They can hold their own for quite some time. The Tithe, mostly just because I was trying to cut corners on gold, and I wanted some more tar pit units mixed in amongst my Graveguard. So they're there just to take hits. They have physical resistance, which is pretty cool, 15% physical resistance on these guys, and just a huge HP pool, 150 unit models. Skeleton warriors here, just once again to help with our numbers, and 2 units of skeleton spearmen. I love how they march in unison. It's pretty cool. So they're our anti-large armor piercing portion of our army, as well as a corpse cart. This is the tier 3 corpse cart. It has the unholy lodestone, which gives a melee attack, melee defense debuff, and an AoE, as well as having a regenerative effect on our army. So we want to keep this high and tight. I didn't go with the Mortis engine, and I never do against the Skaven, because a single Warp Lightning Cannon with its magic attacks will just dumpster a Mortis engine pretty much instantly before the battle starts. And this costs 500 gold, whereas the Mortis engine costs 1400 for the base version and 1700 for the Regiment of Renown. So if you end up losing that before the battle even starts, you pretty much lost the battle. You might as well get out. So I also have a Vargulf, another unit that doesn't get a lot of love, Mr. Fluffy himself, the giant kind of mutated vampire beast. And they have super high armor piercing. They're incredibly fast with 80 movement speed on the battlefield, and they do regenerate and cause terror, which is very good against the Skaven. Also took a vampire with the Lore of Shadows. All she has is, and that's actually slow-mo for a second because we are getting to the important part of the positioning of the battle, but she has only one spell, Melkoth's Mystifying Miasma, which is very good against the Skaven. They have high unit models, and Melkoth does a damage over time ability to all the unit models. It doesn't do a lot of damage, but the more models the better. It also lowers speed, which could be very relevant against the Skaven. She also has her leadership ability, which is providing a nice leadership buff to all of our zombies. We're going to keep her high and tight. She is on a barded, I think they're called Hell Steeds, and that gives her 110 armor, decent movement speed, so she's very survivable. See if we can click on her. I also took Immortal Will, so if she ends up taking a lot of damage, I can pop this and regen her up, no problem. My aerial force, I have 2 Fellbats for every 1 Vargeist, so I honestly thought my opponent here, playing Skaven, would end up taking tons of ranged units, tons of artillery, and make me walk all the way here under the hail of like super amounts of fire. And I wanted to have a very mobile option to shut those down while I march toward him with my very slow-moving, shambling army. And Vargeist are a unit you don't get to see very often. I think they're a little bit overcosted. I would personally like to see their cost drop to about 900 gold instead of the 1,000. They have Frenzy, they cause fear, they are immune to psychology as long as that Frenzy is active. But the thing that makes them weak is that they are very hard to pull out of combat once they are engaged, and they can end up losing a lot of unit models because of that. I would also kind of like to see them get a bit of a melee defense debuff, buff rather. I feel like they're a bit behind the curve in terms of some of the newer units, but 24 melee defense is not enough for a unit that is as unarmored as the Vargeists are. So maybe something like 32 melee defense would be beneficial. And Isabella herself. So I have her with only Raise Dead, which I was going to use to shut down artillery, shut down any kind of ranged play, and I'm going to use that here on the warp fire throwers that the Skavens brought. You better believe it. And I also have Invocation of Nehek, of course, for healing. Going to be very good in this blobby scenario that you already see taking place, because we both went armies that are very heavy on infantry and kind of standing and fighting, very slow-moving armies. I also took Master of Beguilement, which lowers melee attack by 44, which could have been very good had he taken someone like Queek Headtaker. It also will be very good against a unit like the Hell Pit Abomination, which you can see shambling in the background, ominously moving towards our front lines. And the last thing is her unique item, the Blood Chalice of Bathorai. And it's her unique item. It's very strong. It gives hit point regen to a hero or lord. So if she or my other vampire find themselves in dire straits in need of HP, we pop this, especially if it's the vampire here. We can use her regen ability plus the chalice plus her natural regeneration, which she has a ton of. And we can very easily heal her back to full in no time. We'll make good use of that during this battle. She's also on her flying steed. A little bit less armor, but much more speed and mobility. And I'm going to keep her out of harm's way for a good bit of this battle, but I'm going to choose my targets very well with her. She does do great damage. And 480 weapon strength is nothing to sneeze at as well. So my opponent's army, you see here he's got some Skaven slaves chevroned up in the front lines here. Good choice. Let them take the initial charges. He has some clan rats with spears and swords in the front line. Take a good look at these buddies. Put in regular speed. A whole front line of them. And a back line of the rat ogres. So for those of you who've never seen a rat ogre before, check these dudes out. Giant mutated Skaven, all stitched together with all of these different types of weapons attached to their fists. And they're going to get in there and body slam us. I love this choice against the undead. We don't have any ranged options, which are really the only thing that takes down rat ogres efficiently. And yeah, they have excellent armor piercing as well as frenzy. So when they get in the front line, they're just going to mash our units if we don't put a stop to it. Backline of Storm Vermin with sword and shield, another great choice, as well as one unit of halberds. Heavy armor is something that the undead have a problem dealing with. The Vargulf is going to be very good for that. He's kind of a can opener type unit. He also has, as I mentioned, the Warpfire Thrower. So I'm seeing these guys as a super priority. They have got to go. They shoot green Warpfire. Very good at killing my undead units who are mostly weak to fire. And we can't let these guys shoot whatsoever. So I'm posturing with my flying units. I'm watching very closely. My opponent has Skaven Slave Slingers. 3 units. They don't do a ton of damage against armored targets, but against Fellbats, if they're allowed to just sit and shoot, their sheer volume of fire can ensure that they do a lot of damage. 3 units of them focused on a unit like a Fellbats or even the Vargeist with their low armor it can do quite a damage for their cost. They're very cheap units and very effective. So, and then for his Lord Scroll. So same old, you're going to see like 13th spell. You're going to see Stand Your Ground to give leadership and melee defense, and Vermintide as well. Aura of Pestilence, giving -5 melee attack around him. We have that countered, thankfully, with our Lodestone. And yeah, so he's going to get in there and try and fight us in melee. And this Hell Pit Abomination, for those of you who've never seen a Hell Pit Abomination, let's actually pause it. Check this dude out. One of the coolest models ever made by Games Workshop, and then CA took it and made it and took it to a whole nother level. Look at the rats just like coming out of its head. All the warp fire stuff attached to it. It also has like a wheel helping to support its rear end and a bunch of steampunk stuff up here. It's kind of gnarly barbed tail. Yeah, but the Hell Pits, for those of you who aren't aware, they have multiple abilities, one of which is regen. So they do regenerate. They also have 2 horrible to die. So if their hit points drop below 10%, they have a chance of getting tons of hit points back. Usually I think it's about 1,000. And then meanwhile they're regenerating, so you can see how it's pretty difficult to take them down. It has a 50% chance to go off, so that doesn't always happen. A lot of times it's better just to break their morale and then chase them off the battlefield if you can. And when they do die, they summon a unit of Skaven Slave Spears. So basically, slaves just burst forth from its corpse and start fighting you. So they're not very strong, but I mean, it's just a cool little thematic thing with them. And of course, terror is not effective against us, and its missile resistance does not matter. I do like it as a choice. It has huge weapon strength, good armor piercing, and it does have high leadership as long as it's fighting near Scroll. So it's a unit that's honestly very difficult for us to take down without units like Blood Knights in our arsenal. So you'll see here, Once I recognize that my opponent does not have artillery, I'm like, okay, I need to walk up here and force him to come to me. I didn't know what he would do. I thought we might take this engagement on this side of the battlefield, but he started to square up this way, so I was like, you know what? Vampires are the masters of choke point battles. So you'll see here my Grave Guard are getting in the front. Unfortunately, we have barely the opening here, and any kind of AoE skills that Lord Skroak wants to use are going to be devastating against us, as well as these warp fire throwers if we allow them to get online. So I'm bringing Isabella over here, and got some zombies summoned. It was a bit late. I had some problems where this game where I was casting spells, I would kind of look away for a second. The spell didn't get cast, so then I had to cast it again, and that was the first instance of that. So that was a little rough, but I'm going to follow them. I'm not going to let them attack. You saw there a Pestilent Breath from Lord Skroak going down the lines, doing some decent damage to the Tithe, which I'm actually going to pop an Invocation of the Heck on. They will last forever against the Skaven. And I looked over here at this side of the battlefield, and there's really nothing that can deal with Isabella von Karstein, especially if I pop another summon of zombies on top of her. So she's going to be able to stand here with the zombies, and we're going to shut down these warp fire throwers. They never had a chance. So I'm keeping my skeletons in reserve, my spearmen rather. I'm waiting to see where these rat ogres engage, where the Hell Pit Abomination engages. I've sent in the Vargeist against Skroak to kind of shut him down. You see there, they're doing enormous damage to him. They have high weapon strength, not the best armor piercing, but Lord Skroak is a very low armor having unit. And now that I've gotten my other ranged units positioned behind them, I'm going to look to engage these slingers. I'm very worried about these storm vermin. I'm happy that they're not in the front line, causing me a lot of trouble. But at this point, I don't feel quite safe to engage the slingers yet until they're somewhat committed. So the rat ogres have charged in. The Vargulf is in here smashing rats. The Vargeists are fighting rat ogres, which is not a matchup you ever get to see. Actually kind of cool. The Vargeists are bigger than the rat ogres. Pretty sweet. My vampire's gotten in there, and all the while my unholy lodestone is healing up my front line, keeping them fighting. Some of my Vargeists are crumbling. They're very difficult to get back up into the air, as I said in the beginning. So there are lots of points here where I try to pull them out of certain battles, and you just can't. If you commit them too hard, you kind of just have to leave them where they are and let them fight and hope that they can stand on their own. So I've committed my spearmen here, and I've put them into battle with the Hell Pit Abomination and the Rat Ogres, which is an excellent fight for them. My Grave Guard, as well as some of my chaff units, Skeleton Warriors, they are holding up this kind of concave formation that my opponent has, which is nice. He's not completely engaging with all of his forces, which is definitely a benefit to me. And I see here he's pulling out his warp fire throwers and attempting to re-engage. So we're going to be chasing with our Fellbats, which is an excellent use of them. Our Vargulf, we're going to put our Vargulf and our Vampire and Isabella, we're going to put them all in the Hell Pit. And that's a lot of good damage. Lots of heavy weapon strength, armor piercing going in on him. And surrounded like that, getting beaten, his leadership is going to start to fail. And at this point I see that we kind of need to sacrifice some units just to hold up. If we win this frontline engagement, which it looks like we're going to do, then we'll be able to mop up the forces that remain in the end. Lord Skroak has taken a good bit of damage. He's popped Stand Your Ground, which is probably why a lot of these Skaven are still fighting. The Vargulf is vicious in combat. If you try to run from it, you can't. I mean, it has 80 movement speed, which is ridiculous. Rod of Corruption going down from Lord Skroak, which is going to do a ton of damage in this blobbed up engagement, which makes me kind of understand why he felt like this might favor him, this style of fight. But we have Invocation of the Heck, which we can pop in an AoE, and we certainly will throughout the course of this battle. And I think this is it right here. And we're going to kind of counter that Rod of Corruption. We're going to keep our forces fighting. And in a one-on-one battle, Isabella von Karstein will absolutely dumpster Lord Skroak. He summoned some clan rats up and behind us. Not bad. Certainly necessary. But our Grave Guard are in here fighting. Our Spearmen are fighting. And they're all on good targets. Meanwhile, the Unholy Lodestone just providing those buffs, providing that regen. We're using kind of the bare minimum here to hold up this flank. Skeleton Warriors are still in the fight. Grave Guard's still in the fight. 2 units fighting all of these and keeping them back. Some summon zombies here that'll be getting into the battle here shortly to absorb some damage for us. I'll return these Fellbats in a moment. They were helping to rout some of our opponent's forces. These Warp Fire Throwers are finally being committed once again. The Hell Pit Abomination went down at the hands of my Vampire with the Lord of Shadows, as well as the Varghulf. So we stayed consistent. He didn't get the Too Horrible to Die proc, but he did spawn a group of Skaven Slave units, and they will degenerate over time. They're a summon unit. They pretty much broke as soon as they were summoned, which is kind of just what happens. Lord Scrope, believe he went down in the battle here in the center, thanks to Isabella. Now, the beauty of having her on her flying mount is that at this point in the battle, let's say things were going poorly for me, things were getting somewhat dangerous, I could simply pull her up into the air and use her more for her spellcasting abilities, or use her to chase down routing Skaven units. So the thing about Skaven is they're meant to rout, right? Check out these 4 units here being chased off by my 1 Varghulf. So if you have the ability, the means, the speed to chase off Skaven units, which do get a buff when they route to their movement speed, it's kind of a unique racial trait that they have. But if you manage to chase them off in this kind of way, we're chasing off 4 units with 1. So them not being able to get back into this battle is going to be huge. It's going to tip the balance bar even heavier in our favor. And what my opponent still has fighting here are a lot of Storm Vermin, who were committed much later in the battlefield. I'm using Master of Beguilement here on the Storm Vermin with halberds, putting them down to 0 melee attack, which is going to allow my Grave Guard to come in and win this fight handily. Rat Ogres rear charging my Grave Guard, causing some leadership penalties. But at this point, the balance bar is very heavily in my favor. We've finally broken off Skaven Slaves of all things. Fellbats, 60 kills on these Fellbats, 91 on the other. So I think you can tell who might be the MVPs this battle. And that's going to be it. So a pretty fun pit fight. I was expecting to have to show you guys some fancy micro, be on top of my game, use the Fellbats one at a time to shut down artillery, and then use the Vargeist to clean up unarmored units and things like that. But it ended up being a very straightforward battle, which, let's be honest, is much more fun. And anytime you don't have to sweat while you play this game is definitely a better time, in my opinion. So I love my opponent's army. I think, honestly, just a few micro issues, and this would have been a much closer battle. Had he, let's say, engaged with his Storm Vermin up front, saturated with the slaves, my Grave Guard, my skeletons, and zombies would have had a much harder time. And had he kind of saved his Rat Ogres in reserve to hunt down my Fellbats and things like that that were harassing his backline, which he could have kept safe pretty easily. And yeah, he just needed to do a bit more kiting with the slingers, hold the Rat Ogres a bit more in reserve, and really protect this Warp Fire Thrower. The Hell Pit Abomination, bit unlucky there that he didn't get a single proc of Too Horrible to Die, but I mean, it's a 50-50 chance. It's certainly not unheard of. He did get some value, but it's a unit that you really want to protect. If you throw this into melee combat, it would be nice to throw it into melee combat while it's surrounded by something like the Storm Vermin with halberds, in which case this would be a pretty much untouchable unit for me. He engaged kind of in front of his own lines, so that allowed me to then throw in Skeleton Spears and then reroute my heroes, my Varghulf, and Isabella to then, nuke him down. And of course we had already taken the Warp Fire Throwers offline at that point, so it was really just a big melee fight. And even Lord Scrope needed to kind of be held back a bit more to protect him. But when Isabella rules the skies, as she does in campaigns, is very similar to a type of army you might see from her in campaign. Nowhere is safe. I loved having the kind of double vampire synergy. There was a point there, and I didn't get to showcase it, where I think it was my vampire that got hurt really bad. She was getting beaten down. She was near half HP. And then I used Isabella's Chalice, and from about half HP, she went all the way up to full. And that's, of course, she has her own natural regen, which is really solid. But it was a huge heal and replenished her vigor. And that's why you see they're so well topped off this battle. I love the Fellbat picks. The Vargeist picks rather were a bit of a meme pick. I think I probably would have just taken 2 more Fellbats, to be honest. And looking at these kills, I think you can see why. 2 of them died for their king and country, and the other 2 were chasing down rats, getting big kills. Yeah, I would probably cut these 2, get 2 more fell bats, and with all that gold left over, I'd probably have something like 1,200 gold left over. I mean, with that much, I could then afford to get another unit like the Stearnsman and have an even sturdier front line and just as much harass potential in the back line. But I just wanted to show these units that don't get a lot of love: the Vargulf, the Vargeist, the Vampire Heroes, and even the Tithe. I mean, the Tithe did big work that game. They have nearly 10,000 HP with that physical resistance, and they absorb a ton of damage if you give them even a single Invocation of the Heck. They'll last until the end of the battle sometimes. They even got 18 kills. Check that out. I mean, it's huge. It's better than these skeleton spearmen. So, anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Once again, my name is Brett. My channel is Good Talk Gaming. I appreciate my opponent, please, not the face, and for giving me an excellent battle and being a good sport about everything. And please subscribe, guys, if you haven't already. I notice every single subscriber that I get on my channel. And if you want to add me on Steam, please do. I end up playing a lot of games with people who subscribe to my channel and who add me. I don't get to everybody as fast as I would like to because I'm trying to do other games right now in addition to Total War. But I will always do Total War. I will always have time to play a game or two. And if you're interested in that and maybe having a game that we play together showcased on the channel, just message me. And yeah, we can make that happen, guys. If you have a build that you want to showcase on the channel, and you can kind of tell me about it beforehand and we can work it out. And yeah, I can cast a game even like from your perspective if you want. That's kind of a cool idea. And just let me know. And yeah, guys, without any further ado, thank you so much for watching. That's all I have for today. I gotta go make some more videos. And so guys, I will see you in the next one. Take care.